Blessed is he that readeth, and they that hear the words of this prophecy, and keep those things that are written therein, for the time is at hand.
Welcome to Word on the Street, where we bring you hot topics. Now, I want to bring to your attention how the white man is out of his mind scared that we're waking up. Black people in America, we never care about what the KKK doing, the Russians doing, the Ukrainians doing. We don't care about no one and what they're doing. But why is the white man worried about what we believe? Because he knows that when we wake up, he will not exist. Now, I'm going to show you this video of these devils and think and just listen to the conversation. Why do white people who enslaved us really care about the God that we believe in? Why? Because they know that the God of Israel is our God and our God only. I'm going to play this video and I'll be back. Now, this is for educational purposes only. All right?
Focusing on them as a specific area of apologetic research.
And how influential have they been in some of our inner cities and in some of the African American and Hispanic communities?
Hebrew Israelism.
So now the inner city is our inner cities. So anytime white people want to control black so-called black people, they use the word our, we, they use possessive pronouns. Now, anytime something bad happened in our city, they itemize it and they say the black community, the nigger community, the whatever community. But now, since this white dude, what his name is, Michael Brown, he's very fearful about this. If you look in his eyes, now keep in mind that a lot of people with the last name Brown are black people. So most likely, this particular demon, Mr. Dr. Michael Brown, his ancestors owned Israelites as slaves. So the same people that owned us and enslaved us is trying to control what we believe. Now this been happening for the last 500 years. Let me go ahead and continue with the video and I'll be back.
Is becoming the new number one primary urban apologetic issue. It's, I think, displacing the Nation of Islam as the top contender for an alternative urban spirituality. But it's not just in the inner cities. The internet creates a situation where now folks in rural areas, you know what I'm saying? I mean, in corners of very small cities, they're popping up all over, and in the UK and in the islands and even in Africa.
All right, so before we talk about origins, history, what's the appeal? I mean, if I'm just walking by as a bystander, I hear some people that seem very angry, yelling, and I don't hear much about hope and redemption and love, but obviously they have appeal, they're growing. In your view, what's their appeal?
Let me be sympathetic and play the role of a Hebrew Israelite.
Yeah.
We're angry? Of course we're angry. Look at what this country has done to our people for the past 400 years. We're angry? Of course we're angry. We're shot dead in the streets and there's no recompense. You think this country can just get away with that? You're angry? Of course we're angry. These politicians, they don't do anything. The church rips us off, doesn't teach us anything. It's just a game. It's just a show. They don't even teach us the Bible in there. Of course we're angry. And you know what? The prophets of old were angry. You think they put Jeremiah in a pit because he was such a nice guy? You think they tried to kill Paul because he was all smiles and flowers? Of course we're angry. Men of the Lord are always angry at injustice. Now, why aren't you angry? Maybe you're not a man of the Lord.
Well said. Well done. So they're appealing to that. Isn't that a parallel then with Nation of Islam on some level?
To an extent, but here's why they're going to displace the Nation of Islam. It's exotic, the Nation of Islam. What I mean by that is this. All of a sudden, you're from the lost tribe of Shabazz. You got to start learning Arabic phrases. The guy who founded it is not even black, Fard. All the main leaders are light-skinned guys. You know what I'm saying? From Muhammad and Elijah Muhammad to Malcolm X to Farrakhan and everybody else in between. It's very exotic. This Hebrew Israelism, this ideology, it's a small step. All you do is say, you know that book that we cherish so much? Guess what? We're the star of the story in that book. You need to read the same book, but read it through new and improved lenses. So there's a similarity, but the differences are significant, and I think they'll play into the growth and popularity of Hebrew Israelism in the years to come.
And do we have any idea of their size, how many congregations they have,
Yes.
things like that?
Okay, so there's different types and stripes of Hebrew Israelites, like everybody knows. There's on one end of the spectrum, essentially what are black Jews, and maybe they still at the same time hold to a Hebrew Israelite identity. Then way over here on the other end of the spectrum is what's called One West Hebrew Israelites. There's the so-called radical. The man David Anderson was affiliated with One West variety of Hebrew Israelism. Think of it similar to Salafi Islam. Then within that, there's multiple camps. That's a common name for these groups, camps. They usually don't say group. They usually don't say camps. Some of them will say church, but camp is the favorite term. Now within that, we've been doing our own type of speculations and all this, but it appears our speculations were way, way off. What I mean by that is extremely underestimated. And here's why I say that, and this is the answer to the question. Lifeway Research earlier this year just did an extensive analysis when they did a survey of Black Americans' views of Jews in Israel. And within that, they asked questions about Hebrew Israelism. And the data says 4% of all Black Americans self-identify as a Hebrew Israelite. That equals, depending on which demographic you choose, about 1.8 million Americans say they're a Hebrew Israelite. Not only that, almost 20% said they're sympathetic or agree with most of the doctrine. So it's way, way broader ideology if those numbers have anything to them. And Lifeway usually does good research. Lifeway does good research. And an article just came out by Razul Berry in Christianity Today called Knocking on My Jewish Neighbor's Door. That's kind of a companion piece to that research. And he has a very interesting perspective being a Black man living in Brooklyn right next to his city community. So that's an extensive acceptance of this ideology.
All right, so before we get to obviously the apologetic answer and what God is doing and how best to reach Black Hebrew Israelites, let's talk about origins. You mentioned Black Jews. There are certainly Black Jews. I have friends who are Black Jews who are believers in Yeshua the Messiah. And then we know about Black Jewish communities. We know about Ethiopian Jews. We know about the Lemba tribe in Zimbabwe and different groups in Nigeria. So do Black Hebrew Israelites actually go back to Black Israelites legitimately in past history?
Most modern day Hebrew Israelites of the current strand, especially of the One West variety, don't think the Ethiopians are legitimate. But on the non-One Westers do. So there's great divergence in that. Some think all the Igbo and all the Ashanti are. Of course, from what I understand, the only one that has definitive DNA evidence and other factors as well is the Lemba. But the Lemba are not on the west coast of Africa, so they're really irrelevant to the equivalency thesis. The equivalency thesis, what I call it, is that basically if you came over to the Western Hemisphere on a ship, then you're actually an Israelite. That's the essence of it. So it's irrelevant. Here, they try to line themselves up with those previous movements, but it's very ambiguous because there's also an anti-African strand in a lot of One West Hebrew Israelism, especially. And what that means is they say those were Hamites. They sold us, Shemites, into slavery. And part of the reason they did it is because they're not even our brothers. So some of the One West style Hebrews like to believe that they're going to enslave Africans in the kingdom. Now, remember, this is not all Hebrew Israelites, but the Covington Kids situation in January, as well as the David Anderson, Jersey City, those are all One West style Hebrew Israelites. So those are kind of the guys making the news, basically. So yes and no. I could tell you more about their history specifically if you want.
Yeah, well, let's talk about the history. We've talked about it some on the air, but it's been some years now, and you've been focused on it in your studies. So how does this begin as a sect in America?
The best way to understand it is to go back to the year 1919. Now, there had been some movement before in which some pastors were saying this. Hey, you know those songs we've been singing, those spirituals? You know how we called Harriet Tubman Moses? That's not figurative, folks. That's literal. We are the Israelites. There had been some movement before, right after Reconstruction in the 1880s and 1890s. But it wasn't until 1919 that you see something come about in Harlem called the Commandment Keepers. The Commandment Keepers essentially practiced a form of Black Judaism, but they kind of wanted it both ways. They basically said, yeah, these Jews over here are fake, but then they would still kind of sometimes work with them, sometimes copy some of their ceremonies, things like that. So it was a real strange relationship. Well, eventually, some members became unhappy with that. And they also said, you know, maybe we should reconsider the New Testament. And so they brought the New Testament in their teachings and eventually left the Commandment Keepers. So after 1919, you add 50 years, you get 1969. That's the official beginning of what we call One West Hebrew Israelism. And it began by a man named Abba Bivens. And Abba Bivens had students, and one of the main students was Ariyah. He is still alive. He's an older man, and he's not very vocal or active anymore, but Ariyah is still alive this day. And he's the one who came up with a lot of their doctrinal distinctives. Specifically, I'll mention two: the 12 Tribes Chart of Israel, which identifies each modern-day people group who's considered an Israelite with an ancient tribe of Israel, and something called Lashawan Kodash, which basically means the Holy Tongue, which is a specialized version of Hebrew that essentially drops out the known vowel pronunciation and replaces them all with the I sound, except in certain cases. And so you get Jesus being Yahweh Shai, for example. And those key distinctives, Ariyah is the founder of it. And if you look at David Anderson's social media profile, which I was actually looking at one right before the show, and I kid you not, it got taken down as I was looking at it. So I got some screenshots and images of one of his Facebook profiles, and it literally disappeared in my hands. But I got some stuff on it, and in it he uses a Lashawan Kodash name, Dawada. That's not a proper way to say David or whatever, but that's how he would say it, Lashawan Kodash. So 1969 really begins it, but it wasn't until the advent of the internet they started blowing up, and really the past 5 years have been a real booming period for them.
Got it. All right, friends, we're going to come right back with Vocab Malone, his book, Barack Obama versus the Black Hebrew Israelites. Got to ask him how he came up with that name. And I want to revisit one thing about commandment keepers and fake Jews. We'll come back to that in a moment. I'm speaking with Vocab Malone about the Black Hebrew Israelites. So glad that with his focus on urban apologetics that he's focusing on this influential group. Just looked at a comment on our Facebook feed, Ask Dr. Brown on Facebook, from a woman, Deoxy, who said that she met a couple, Black Hebrew Israelite couple, that were going to every Black community in Central America to spread their message. And you know, from my years knowing Hebrew, their version of the Hebrew is beyond bizarre. But it is interesting, Vocab, that some of the early commandment keepers, as you call them, did work with the Jewish community, so didn't see some of them as fake Jews. And that
These devils love to insult us. All they do, they try to act like they are friends and allies. Every chance they get, they just like try to insult our intelligence. These devils, look at his eyes. This devil he's a demon from the pits of hell.
in that sense, there's a man named Abu Hamar. Are you familiar with him and his work here?
Abu Kamar is the greatest historian of One West Hebrew Israelism alive.
Interesting.
Seriously, that's my homie right there.
All right. So you've been able to learn from him as well, and
yes, the man's memory is impeccable.
Amazing. So there's stuff that's known. In other words, this is not like 10,000 years ago trying to uncover some ancient documents. You can pretty well trace certain history, where things have gotten a foothold. What is it that is the key, in your view? Obviously, different groups, right? And diversity of human beings in all of them. But what's the key in reaching those who have been deceived by this, or helping people who are now hearing it and getting pulled away from the truth?
Well, one thing real quick, I know you mentioned the Hebrew, just again,
Now they act like they care about us so much. How can they save us? How can they save us from this horrible idea? These white people know damn well they don't give a damn about our community. They hate our guts. And why would you want now Mr. Dr. Brown, he want to save the black community from believing that they are the chosen people. Now, why would our people need to be saved from believing that God loved them and that they are chosen by God? This doesn't make sense. The devil is the white man. The devil is the damn white man.
They do not all accept Lashawan Kodash. There are a number of the groups who speak legitimate Hebrew, and a few of the guys have even become quite proficient. Excuse me, a few of the guys and gals have become quite proficient in legitimate modern Hebrew. That's one thing. But you're saying, why are they being pulled away? I mean,
Well, how can we best? I mean, you hit on it well when you played the devil's advocate, and you spoke of the anger, and you spoke of the injustice, and you spoke of the appeal, and yeah, it's time, righteous anger, and stand up, and now this is your spiritual heritage. How can we reach these people? What are the keys to reaching them and to delivering them from deception?
Well, some Hebrew Israelites here, and this will probably say,
So the so-called white man think we need him to deliver us. We don't need the people who kidnap us and enslave us to deliver us. These people is wicked as hell, man. I hate these devils with a passion. Mr. Brown used a dog.
Vocab's being the slick devil that he is, he only mentioned one aspect. The other reason we're drawn to this is because it's so clearly evident. So you might have someone who say, I'm not angry about anything. I just want my rightful heritage. I've looked at the facts, and it's obvious that we are the people that this book speaks of. I'm sorry if you can't handle that, but God's in control, not you. So there are people who would have that and probably want to make that caveat in there.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Pulling people out. A big part is on the proactive side. No lone apologist or squad of apologists running around the internet, as helpful as they can be by God's grace, is going to fix this as we're in the spiritual war. It really is going to start in the churches, and that is going to take a few things, I believe. And one is there needs to be an awareness that this battle is even going on, because a lot of the churches are asleep at the wheel, especially in relationship to this fight. And I'll be honest, I encounter not only apathy, but sometimes from more mainstream churches, soft bigotry. And basically, that's the black church's problem. Not really worried about it. We do encounter some of this kind of stuff. And so it's going to take a concerted effort combining people with open ears, but also willing to fight. And what I mean by that is this. If you deal with the so-called modern Hebrew Israelites, they generally know how to be respectful. For the most part, they can be pretty cool. But the thing is, they're not all that exist out there. So if you get into this, you better have the thickest skin. And really what I mean by that is you need to be on game when it comes to displaying the fruit of the Spirit. Not that anyone's perfect. We're not saying that. But if you don't know what it means to be patient and long-suffering and gentle and all that, yet while being, like serpents and doves, that kind of thing, just like Jesus said, it's the wrong fight for you, because they are going to do everything in their power to stop you, because what they think is you're trying to stop the awakening of a people. So they view you literally as a sort of a demonic kind of person, because who else would do that but the devil? And most of them, by the way, don't hold to a literal devil. So essentially, people are personifications of the devil. The devil is sort of almost like an idea or spirit. There's not actually Satan in most of these people's demonology. And so I would be a perfect example of the devil aspect of non-Israelite peoples in their mind. So they will some of them will literally say and do anything. No need for a pity party right now, but I could tell you a lot of stories. And it's just a fact. So this is not going to go away. And making fun of them only, sometimes I think it's okay to ridicule silly beliefs, but that's not going to fix it either. We got to do the work of understanding the Old and New Testament better. We got to do the work of addressing social justice issues. We got to do the work of recognizing the black church as something that's part of the greater church and not just this little corner tucked away. We got to recognize the significance of the African church within churches. There's there's a lot to do there. And sometimes it might involve recognizing certain whitewashing of Christianity. Now, they overstate the case, I believe, but it's not like that didn't happen at all, where essentially a Eurocentric view of Christianity became the picture of Christianity. And I mean, missionaries have got away from that by and large, but that was a big problem with American missionaries in prior generations, and a lot of them have recognized that. And if you study missiology, they recognize that error. You know, we don't need to tell people to wear ties to become a Christian.
Right.
So there's a lot there. So we really are playing catch up, Dr. Brown.
And you know, when if you would have an average white American Christian see a depiction of Jesus with his disciples, and they all looked black or African black, right? Your average white Christian would think, that's wrong, that's not historical, and yet they wouldn't think that if they were all white. You know, so
right.
There are presuppositions that people have made, and now that error that, you know, the white European blonde-haired, blue-eyed Jesus, that kind of thing, and then the white man's religion, to the extent it's just unconscious in some Western Christians, then these folks are going to hit the exact opposite side. And really, the truth is in the middle. The truth is in the middle there. But the biggest thing is the spirit of it, that the physical color is not the issue. It's the life-changing power of the gospel. So, real quick, and we'll have to discuss this further. This
Dr. Brown dude is a devil. So he's trying to say whitewashing and then blackwashing, but it's in the middle. They always want to say it's in the middle. Jesus was a dark-skinned black man. Revelation chapter 1, 13 to 16. If you read it, you're going to get the full context. Can't stand these devils. Let's continue.
Book, Barack Obama versus the Black Hebrew Israelites. Obviously, it's a catchy title. What do you mean by it?
There was a movie that came out on Netflix. It was supposed to be a biopic, however you say that term, of a young Barack Obama at Columbia. And when he was at Columbia, for part of the time, he stayed in Harlem. And so they showed the actor playing young Obama walking through Harlem, specifically 125th Street, where these guys kind of originate. And he has a little debate with the Hebrew Israelite camp. When I saw that scene, I said, that's the title for a book. Barack Obama is portrayed as being an apologist against the Hebrew Israelites. So it's tongue-in-cheek. What I do is, though, I take it to use it as a platform to explain what's really going on. The book's not really about that. It's just a way to get you into that world.
Got it. No, it's a brilliant choice for a title. And bottom line, those that are caught up in this deception,
I'm going to leave this video right here because I can't stand to stomach no more of these devils. But let's hear what this Mr. Brown was going to say before we end it.
They don't have a personal relationship with God. They don't know the love of God and the forgiveness of sins and the transformation of life. There's got to be some legalistic striving to be something or to do something. As you meet those that came out of this, what are they saying?
So this devil just said, because we don't believe Jesus is a white man and that we are the chosen people, that we don't know God. Mr. Brown, you are a horrible man and I hate your guts. I think that you are a piece of crap. You and Vocab Malone. Disgusting devils. Alright, thank you for watching today. Word on the street, we bring you hot topics. I'm going to let this video end here because I can't stomach anymore. With that in mind, thanks for watching.
Yeah, looking for blood on the street. Struggle, hard times in my community. Yeah, word on the street. Word on the street. Yeah, word on the street.